let's look at some of these ganja stocks, because it looks like the weed stocks are getting some love here. So we're looking at some Canopy growth right now, ticker weed, on the American Stock Exchange, right? The NASDAQ, whatever, it's CGC, right? US stocks, it's CGC. Canadian on the TSX, we've got weed, WEED. So what we're looking at here, and we'll zoom out to the weekly time frame, right? So these stocks have gotten, right? Look at this. We ramp, and then we get crushed multiple times here. So we're at a point in the stock where we've gotten so absolutely obliterated, and I don't think these weed companies are going to go away because, man, weed is such a, like, it's a commodity at this point. Like, it'll never ever, people love weed. Like, I don't think that's a business that's going to go away. That doesn't mean that this stock is like going to moon. It could go lower. But I just want to point out some technicals on what I think is pretty interesting here. So we'll mark out first and foremost this resistance zone. That's the first thing I've kind of noticed, and it's pretty significant in my opinion, because for weeks we couldn't break up over that level, right? So again, from very fundamental basics, we were downtrending for a long while, right? And then we go sideways for a few months. And if we zoom in here, we're going to see that there's like a change of characteristic in the stock, which is important to kind of notice, especially if you want to participate in a trade like this, right? So we'll zoom in now. We'll go to the 2-day, right? Or even the daily. But as you can see here, right, we look in and the characteristics have completely changed, where this was the downtrend. We go sideways, and now look, we have this uptrend starting here. And something I want to point out is like that resistance zone that held us back for a while, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. We can move it up a bit. Doesn't matter. 5, 6. It held us back quite a bit here. And now we're starting to break up over it with some good sized volume coming in, right? So when we're looking at something like this, right? And if you're thinking like, how am I going to jump in this trade? Well, like, this isn't financial advice. I'm not trying to give you tips on to buy it, but if I were to be looking at this and I wanted to participate in a trade, I'd be looking for the fundamental things that are easy for me to understand, right? Like, I don't know if this is going to go higher. I don't know if it's going to go lower. So why not create parameters that make sense to me? That way, if it happens, I can now buy in without question, right? And then set my risk tolerance. Like, if it goes below this X level, I will sell, right? So something that I think is important is understanding those basic trends. And it might sound silly, right? But understanding that this is what an uptrend does. So how could you possibly use this to capitalize on a trade? Like, how Noah? That doesn't make sense, right? Well, what we want to point out, right, is if this is what's happening right now, and this is going to continue, let's assume that this will continue. We don't know how long, but this resistance, what happens with resistance is when it flips, we want to see it become support. That's what is signaling healthy characteristics in a stock. That's like healthy supply and demand zones flipping, right? So that's a good thing. You want to see it come back to that level, test it, and then create that higher low, right? That's exactly what we'll be looking for. And I think that would be a pretty good like indication to potentially enter a trade on this stock. Is we see this push, right? This could go a little bit higher, who knows? We really don't, right? If it does, what I do think would give me the signal though is if we come back and we test this previous resistance, and if it acts as support, in my opinion, that would be a perfect buy signal, because look, it is telling us, right? Downtrend, sideways, characteristics are changing here. Something fundamental is going on. We could be seeing that nice little Santa Claus rally help these, some of these pot stocks and maybe more momentum trading stocks start to move, right? So instead of being, kind of reckless and just going, screw it, I'm jumping in, I see the hype, maybe set some parameters for yourself. That way you can mitigate the risk, if you see what I'm saying. So that's what I'd be looking for. I think that that's a major zone. I think we will eventually come back to test this. I don't know when it will be, but if so, for me personally, I think that's where I'd want to catch this trade, because I don't want to chase. I'm not into that. I'd like when the opportunities fall in my lap. And I think that by understanding these basic charts and technical analysis, it could help you to like get that edge and let the opportunities come to you just simply from understanding basic chart analysis. So I think that's pretty cool. I thought that I'd break that down here on weed. If you look at a bunch of other ones, my buddy Nick, shout out to Nick, he pointed this one out to me. This one's a low-key beauty too, but we have a nice mover here on Cresco Labs. And again, right, it's all chart patterns. Like what we're looking at here is a triangle, and now who knows when it's going to break out, right? You don't know when it's going to break out. You're just potentially watching the stock. Now, as this gets tighter and tighter and you see that this day it breaks out, look at the volume coming in, we beat earnings. We're creating higher lows off the bottom, right? So things are getting tighter, right? It's not always going to be perfect like this, but it might look like something like that, where things get tight and then we get the breakout. And that's exactly what we're looking at here on Cresco. So I think it's important to notice, right? There's a bunch of pot stocks ripping right now. Well, what does that mean? Right? It doesn't mean they're going to continue ripping, but it's important to notice that like these chart patterns are definitely worth keeping an eye on. Like there's an excellent trade here, right? So this is up 30%. We look at weed and off of the lows, like off of the lows down here, we're up almost 100%. So there's definitely opportunities in this market. You got to keep your eyes peeled, and technical analysis will help you with that, man. So cheers, guys. Peace. Enjoy.